Can you hear us
Hi,
okay,
Terry?
Terry?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yep, all good.
perfect. Is Terry the only one online? So I'm gonna skip the Zoom etiquette. We don't need to talk about that, or privilege of the floor. So do I have a motion to approve the November 6th meeting minutes?
I make a motion, just one correction in the next to last line, upcoming meeting, November 6th. It's,
I have just a comment, and I don't have the minutes with me, but we use the term crawl, C-R-A-W-L, was used at the bottom of page 2 and a couple sentences. I don't know what crawl is.
It's the internet. I guess it's kind of like an internet term. The short-term rental companies that go out and look for potential listings that are happening in the town, like on vacation on by owner or Airbnb. They sometimes say it's like a spider or a crawl. Okay. It's using an algorithm. It's all done by computers, and they search the sites and go out and snap everything they find and make a list for us.
Okay, the context I wasn't sure. So a short-term rental company is looking for customers for themselves?
Yeah. No,
we're trying to find who's renting
houses. I was trying to find
a company, like the company we have is called Property Guard. Right now we have they do that service for us on our behalf. They find people who are using or who are listing a home as a short-term rental, and they tell us we found these 5 places or whatever.
Everybody knows that?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You know that, John?
I do know.
Clarified. Thank you. I'll approve it.
There was a
Sorry.
in that same discussion. It was kind of cryptic. Referral to Ontario County, as some go to the planning board, may need to be in zoning. I have no idea what that discussion was about.
When we were discussing how we process short-term rental applications and the fact that there may be a reason why some might get referred to the planning board in the draft, you'll see it's those who are proposing 6 or more bedrooms would be reviewed by the planning board. As you know, special use permits are sent to the county for review, Ontario County Planning Board. And I think we were having a discussion about some short-term rental applications don't go to the planning board. Anything with 5 or fewer bedrooms wouldn't under the proposed changes.
Town planning.
Yes, our planning board.
Okay.
And then anything with 6 or more, if these changes go through, would come to the planning board. But I think the question was, how do we handle Ontario County Planning Board review of some but not all short-term rental applications? Is that a problem? Right now, they are not going to county planning board. Even though technically they are a special use permit, they're not reviewed like other special use permit applications are. I think that was the discussion. There wasn't really a conclusion.
Does the county planning board always review every special use permit application from that goes through the county board?
There's New York State Law 239, and which does that specifically spell out special use permits? I believe that relates to land use zoning. So there's no change when it's the issuance of a special use permit for a short-term rental. That's an administrative action which are exempt from county planning board.
So administrative action is
administrative actions are exempt. Yes. So, but I would recommend you double check that. I think it's 239N, I believe.
And then also the county's own referral criteria that we use as a guide to what goes to them does list special use permits.
That would be for a land use, right?
Okay.
This is an administrative action.
Okay.
Sounds like problem solved.
So well, we also talked about it not carrying through with the property, but rather just applying to the owner. So that's a little different than most special use permits too. So
that's why I say it's administrative action. I don't think it's a problem for you.
Okay, so as long as we keep that term in mind, administrative action, then it doesn't become.
Does that cover the public notices as well? Because we don't do those for
right?
I believe the law actually requires, right? Isn't that one of the changes we're talking about? Making
Yeah,
sure that
asking-
for,
Yeah,
or it is for more than 5 or
Oh,
whatever. it is.
yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
But the less than.
correct. The less than.
the last one, yeah, we don't, it's that was the whole point when we were talking about it, was trying to make it so that
Yeah,
people were
for the-
aware.
For the
Because that's a
6
more significant change than, you know.
6 or more, it would be like, I think we would treat it like any other special use permit application that goes to the planning board.
Maybe get into the next item. So I make that motion, we approve the minutes with those corrections.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. And just quick note. We had accessory dwelling units. We said we are gonna hold that for future New York State regulations.
Yes, we did say that.
I don't know if future New York State regulations are gonna be coming on that.
If they do, it would be between January and April.
I would suspect you'll probably see some as part of the budget. On the
I
things
think so
that I've
too.
heard. So the state budget.
You think that they're going to, you said?
I do.
Yes,
So
I do
state
too.
budget gets adopted by April 1st of each year, or at least it's supposed to, right? So probably by the beginning, the middle of March, you'll start to hear a lot.
So we could at least hold it until then.
That's what I
Okay.
was saying last. time.
Okay, that was all. I just wanted a clarification. Excuse me, I'm sorry about that. Now, the one thing that's not on this agenda that I see here, was this the first agenda? Did you modify the agenda to put dispensaries on it?
I did, it didn't
Yes,
print for me, so I had Mike print it, so he may have printed the other one.
All right.
Oh, I didn't have that. on.
I assumed Adam was gonna be joining us for this, but when we went out to the public, did we tell them we were gonna be talking about dispensaries? Did we send this notice out to the public?
It goes on the website.
Because I kind of wanted to conclude that conversation. My own personal feeling is that I'm not in favor of it because I don't see a clamoring of support or of public opinion saying we should change it. So I'm kind of not of the opinion that I don't think we should, but I want to get everybody else's opinion and kind of put this to bed if we could.
Remember, whatever we decide or don't decide, if it went to a change, there would be a public hearing at the town board meeting level. where
Correct.
people could
Yeah.
vote.
But I just wanted
We're
to
just-
know if we made it
Okay.
public so that people would attend if they were concerned about it, but. I mean, I don't see a public uproar and a lot of people coming out and saying we need this in the community, so I wanted to. And we were asked to review this by our town supervisor, so I kind of wanted to. Put that conversation to bed if we could, or decide we wanted to continue it at a later date. But I wanted to see how everyone else felt about it.
I thought we put to bed the last meeting. Go ahead, Terry.
Go ahead, Terry.
I would agree with you, Jan.
Okay. Everybody else agree with me? Adeline?
What are we agreeing to?
Not
to-
make a change.
Not
Okay.
changing it, leaving the
Fine.
code as it is.
I did have a follow-up conversation after that last meeting with Adam. We talked a little bit about, the petition that he did. That was I believe it was a MoveOn.org petition. So while people could say they're from Canandaigua, there's no real step to quantify whether or not how many of them are from the town of Canandaigua, and I can see based on some of the addresses, some of them weren't in the town of Canandaigua, some of them were. And it was a specifically targeted survey or petition, so
Right.
I don't think it was accurate sampling, in my opinion, of the entire town. And there was also the question about the city, but the city is allowing the dispensaries. So one half dozen of the other.
Yeah, so I guess I'd move that we close the conversation on modifying our sound code regarding dispensaries.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So moved. I got that out of the way. We want to go through the short-term rental modifications. Is that, Terry, have you seen this, the red line?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody have any comments on this as we go through it?
Um,
When we
Kim,
spend
could you
the
zoom
time
in
doing
a
it, I
little
think
bit
it's
on
well
that?
worth the effort. I think we've really tightened it up
Thank you.
I have
based on our discussion.
I
Since we got to keep things silent.
I had little little bitty things too. You wanna go first, Tom?
Yeah, and again, it's stuff we talked about before, I think, but page one. 2/3 down the page, under floor plan. And it may be a nickel dime issue, but a level by level sketch, I suggest rather than plan. Of the structure rather than the property. Because we're talking about the structure, we're not talking about the property.
I agree with that.
And under local context and or down below. The owner point of, again, emphasize point of local contact. In the first sentence there. Because we need a local contact.
Last week or month, there was a discussion on, and I just looked at it this morning, within 60 miles.
Yeah, that
Is that
was
still
one of mine. We
a
needed to define
recommendation? Do we
local.
really need to define the number of miles, or that at
60
least
miles
they,
a long way off.
at least they can,
I think there should be a definition of local, because some people might think local is New York City, some people might think local is Canandaigua, you know what I mean, so. I mean, we could just say within Ontario County. I think that's. You know, or within Monroe, Ontario, or Wayne counties, or something like that.
I'm okay with Ontario County. I think that clarifies it a little bit. It's a
I
little-
think you're gonna run into issues with that. because
Why?
that's
What are your thoughts?
Too tight, I think, because even like Finger Lakes Premier Property is based out of 10, yeah. You
Okay,
know, so, I mean, you've gotta, I think, give a little bit more leeway. otherwise-
just leave it a local and see what happens. If we need to tighten it up, we tighten it up at a later date.
Yeah.
Or like Ontario or contiguous counties, because we do that a lot with civil service. It's
Yeah.
Ontario and contiguous. So any
Contiguous.
county that's but then also qualify.
Yeah, that
way
works.
Seneca, Yates, Skyland, kind of sort of, yeah, down at the bottom.
and for enforcement
It's Jerry's
purposes,
answer.
for enforcement purposes on our end, when we were reviewing permits. We're saying that when we're asking them to provide a contact person with a name and number for that's local, we're going to have to require that they give us their home address. Because we'll have to find out if they do live in one of these counties, if that's what the law says. I guess.
Well, but sometimes they're businesses, so, you know, like on Finger Lakes Premier Properties, we don't need anyone's home address, it's a business, so.
They're not always businesses.
No, but I'm saying sometimes they are, so I mean,
So we're also gonna need to amend the requirements of the application that they provide an address.
I mean, you could say provide a home or business address within Ontario or its contiguous counties, something like that.
Or are we okay just asking them? I'm just trying to think about how we process applications. If they're required to be there, are we just asking for it under the acknowledgements
Do you
or?
have the address of the rental? Do you have the address of the applicant? I mean, on your form?
The owner we do,
But
the applicant,
Could
You may not be
be
managing it.
Well,
Yeah.
a corporation, could be anywhere.
Yeah, and even if, you know, I had a short-term rental in town of Canandaigua, I may not be the local contact or the one managing it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it could be the guys in Penn.
Yeah.
okay, we'll just say that the person claiming to be the local contact, there needs to be an address.
we could tell from there.
My area code's in Washington State,
Mhm.
so no, you can't really,
Not anymore.
Yourself.
yeah.
Yep.
Get area.
Okay, Tom, what else?
Page 3, and this is. Sarah, you have to write her down it. Page C, again, 2/3 down, evidence of property. insurance and the certificate of liability. It's kind of duplication with page 5, item J. You're asking them twice for property.
So page 3, I think, is where we're talking about the requirements of the application.
Mhm.
It wasn't in there before, but since we
Yeah.
require it to be in the application, we put it there. The other page, I think, is under where they're acknowledging that they're gonna have it and keep it throughout the time that they have the permit. I think it's okay to have it in there both places, because it's kind of,
Okay, I just thought it was duplication.
it is, but before it wasn't in the requirements for the application, but we were requiring it to be a part of their application, so I thought it should be there. It was, before it was only an acknowledgement. I don't know, did we, I mean, I guess we could take it out of the acknowledgement.
No, I
But-
like it in both.
I believe it.
Okay.
I think it makes sense in both because some people might only be looking at the requirement part and not the definition part, you know what I mean? So.
This is a question for Doug. And maybe Chris. When we the town issue a permit and we inspect, Mike goes out or certifies that it's okay. When the town deals with vendors, you get some kind of an indemnification agreement, a hold harmless, whatever. These are businesses that we're essentially licensing. Should we have some kind of indemnification running to the town? Saying that, no, Mike didn't check the smoke detectors or didn't check out the number of doors or whatever.
No, because we're not hiring them. Is the simple answer. We're not hiring them.
Okay.
If we were hiring them, that would be different. The
And
rest of that insurance stuff is basically the coverage of the short-term rental. But like in the indemnification stuff that you're talking about, we would absolutely do that if the town was hiring a contractor to provide a service to the town.
but not whether we're just licensing them to do something. Okay, I just have, and the concern, the place burns down with 12 people in it and they have $500,000 coverage. Who's the next deep pocket?
Well, I think that's honestly why you have it in there twice too, because the other thing is they'd be in violation of the chapter by having it in the second one, right? Because they have to acknowledge that they're gonna keep it.
Mhm.
Otherwise, they would be in violation, and so the town's not gonna be held liable if they knowingly violated.
The deep pocket very often
Yes.
happens.
The
Should
other,
should we have minimum limits?
who
If
decides
somebody's
what they
cheap
are?
and buys the cheapest policy they can, and they have $25,000 liability coverage, like many people that are driving around in an automobile do.
Who decides what the minimum is?
That's the question that I'm throwing out for the rest of us.
Okay.
I would
don't
say
know
at least $1 million.
And what,
Running a business and inviting people into your structure.
I think that's a conversation that their insurance agent needs to have with them. It's not something that I think we can require.
But if they don't have enough, they will go after the town, trust me.
Okay.
We
but-
require a $2 million minimum if they're doing business with the town. Again, if we're hiring an entity to do business with the town, come on town property, we require that they have a $2 million policy to protect the town. But again, I don't think that's not what we're doing here. All we're doing is permitting this to take place. And even more than that, we're giving guidelines and regulations so that they do it. Otherwise, they could just do it with no regulations. In the way that it's structured in the state of New York, right? So at least we're putting some limitations. I understand what you're saying about the deep pockets, but the town is not, I mean, the town can always be sued. But I think that's why you actually have this law, is it actually provides a lot of protection to the town.
If you're comfortable with it, it's okay. I tossed that out. So, going on page,
I did have one more comment, if you don't mind. You were talking about inspections. We only do inspections if there's a complaint or if there's something in the application that needs a visit in order to answer. They're not all getting inspected.
okay, we're just acknowledging the owner has told us that they have all the.
No, they're
Safety stuff.
acknowledging, they're signing their name to say, I did all these things on the list that you say are required. Fire extinguishers in certain places,
Okay.
smoke detectors, signs that say what the address is, all that stuff. When they sign it, and we remind them of this when they come through with an application, when they sign it, they're saying that they've already done it. That stuff is in place. They're acknowledging that they've done it. Now, if Mike or Kristen is going out to do an inspection for whatever reason, complaint, or sometimes there's a question that pops up, it might have to do with the floor plans, that just a visit just helps answer it, like, no, this really isn't a bedroom, or yes, this is a bedroom. So they do go out, but they're not inspecting those items unless that was part of the question.
You know,
So is that a comment or a question?
He
It's
was
a
using it as part of
response.
his
Yeah.
comment earlier, when they do an inspection. I just wanted to
Okay.
clarify that
We don't.
not
inspect.
everybody gets an inspection.
We just,
Just so everybody
we
understands.
just check to make sure they have acknowledged they've done what we asked them to.
Mhm.
Separate topic though, for future discussion, might be worth at some point in time as more and more rentals come online in the town of Canandaigua. For the town to consider rental inspections. A lot of municipalities do.
Yeah,
The town of Canandaigua does not. Short-term and regular rentals, apartments and those types of things. City of Canandaigua does, City of Geneva does, right? I mean, a lot of municipalities do. That would, I mean, that would put a lot more burden on staff, and it would have to be staffed appropriately to cover that. But a lot
We'd
of
have to look at
municipalities do.
We'd have to look at the fee structure again as well to
Yes.
cover our expenses,
Yes,
et cetera.
yes.
And it seems, if I remember this conversation correctly, the number of rentals seems to be decreasing as opposed to increasing now.
Short-term rentals maybe,
Short-term
but not
rentals.
rental.
But I'm
No,
talking about
short-term.
rentals. Like, I'm thinking about all the
All
apartments
rentals.
working online.
Yeah, that's
everything.
definitely increasing.
That's definitely increasing. You have 115 new that are just coming online now. You've got the next phase of Creekview 96. I know that there's been some complaints, and we've gone out to Creekview recently to look at some, I mean, it's all of those types of things. I mean, off the top of my head, there's gotta be more than 1,000, I would think.
So let's expand that conversation a little bit. Are you talking pre-occupancy inspections?
No,
You're
annual.
talking post
Annual
annual.
inspections. Most municipalities do it.
And the purpose of the annual inspection is to identify
Safety.
violations of ordinance?
Life, health, safety stuff. Right?
Yeah. So past experience, Geneva has it listed as operating permits. Any multifamily residential, which is 3 units and above, as well as just like we do now with our current public assembly areas, hazardous occupancies, restaurants, etc., have to have an operating permit. The multifamily residentials, they get inspected once every 3 years. And it's a fire safety inspection as well as a property maintenance inspection. So you're looking at 3 different code books and basically just maintaining that the property is upholding and is in compliance with New York State Uniform Code.
And if we were to, we don't currently have operating licenses.
The town of Canandaigua does not. City
So
of Canandaigua does. City of Geneva does.
I would assume then, based on this conversation, that we would initiate some type of operating license ordinance with fees associated with it to cover our expenses. And are we getting many complaints now for our rental properties?
Yes.
A lot,
A lot?
a lot.
Tell me what a lot is. A lot's not.
Roughly
Depends on the
about
facility, right?
12 a week.
Well, a week.
12 a week.
Are these long-term rental, short-term rental, or both?
Mainly long term. I'd say about 1, and again, we're in the off season, so it's hard to say, but 1 a week when you average it out for short term rental.
How much of your time do you spend doing this?
Complaints,
These 12 complaints that you're getting every week?
roughly probably 16 hours total between 2 code
40% of your time.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that,
Yes.
I think the conversations that we've had, it seems like Francesca's picking up a
Yeah.
lot more of that, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I mean, that's primarily what she's doing now,
Exactly.
is going out to these rental facilities and dealing with these complaints. And
In
going
total,
with
she's
them.
spending her
Mhm.
full-time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. This is a
Huge.
Yes.
So we should add that to the
Yeah.
list, huh?
And to be clear, we do have operating permits, but they're not for this stuff.
Not for,
No, it's like, an operating permit for assembly places, like churches fill one out every year, stuff like that, but it's not for residents.
So for instance, like Ron, that's all, Ron works part-time, he's a fire inspector, that's all he does. Is he goes and does places of public assembly, businesses, does the fire inspections. That is
Temporary.
all he does.
are the fees for those types of entities covering Ron's expenses?
No, that all should be looked at.
Yeah.
That's what we can kind of direct you guys
Yeah,
to
we've
look
got
at the fees for this year,
We've
so.
got a spreadsheet in
We
the
got a
works.
working document.
Good.
Finalizing.
Yeah, if we can have that for our January or meeting a recommendation, that would be very helpful.
That kind of brings up a question of what kind of split should there be in inspections or activities by the CEO that are covered by fees, and how much is inherent in operating the town on a day-to-day basis? Should everything that somebody does be covered by a fee? Or is there a certain amount that's absorbed by the town as in the course of doing business?
So yes, Terry, I agree. That's a question that we need to converse about, but I would recommend, if you don't mind, we hold that for a future meeting.
Yeah.
And address this in its, I've heard complaints about some of the rental units. And I think having operating permits and having regular inspections needs to be addressed, as well as what's the appropriate fee for the permit to help cover our expenses, et cetera. So, and maybe that's a good conversation for our next meeting, but if you don't mind, let's do that for the future meeting.
Oh, no, I don't mind. It's just occurring to me sitting here that,
yeah,
these are businesses that are, people that want to establish a business in our town. Right. Our policy so far has been we don't do inspection, but if in the course of short-term rental day-to-day life we're required to because of complaints, well, seems like they should be paying the freight.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. Put it off to another time.
Yeah. Okay, Tom, you want to carry on?
Page 5.
And thank you for bringing that up, Sarah.
Looks like item B, we talk about.
Where are you?
Page 5, item B. Third of the way down says, sign will be posted to state no events are permitted and so on and so forth. We don't define events, and what you're saying is somebody that's rented a 2-bedroom apartment or house, they can have only 4 people there. So if they have a birthday party or a dinner party or whatever, how the hell are you going to enforce that?
Say that one more time. Sorry, I was distracted by the alert.
I'm saying, how are you going to enforce events?
Events. What the hell is an event, and how do we define an event? And I tell you to go back to page 7, where we talked about any conduct on the premises involving parties or events or loud noises. I would just leave it at forget about any conduct and don't further define it.
So that section on page 5, that is the sign that is posted to the renters. So that is informing the renters that they shouldn't. That way, not only are we leaving it up to the property owner, who's ultimately responsible, but that's their way of communicating it to the renter.
You know that somebody that's rented that 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom, there's going to be twice as many people there.
Then a complaint.
They're going to have a birthday party. They're going to have a wedding, something or other.
And if that happens, they can lose their short-term rental.
Yeah, that would be over the maximum occupancy. A complaint, should one be filed, an investigation will take place, and at such time, the special use permit would go before the planning board for possible.
It's just opening the door to too many complaints and too much administrative BS. I don't know what the solution is, but
I think you have to have it, honestly, because you need the case where, you know, you can fall back on it to revoke the short-term rental. I mean, that is the core of, I think, a lot of what the discussion has been over the last couple of months, and you have to have that notice in there. If the sign is there, right, that's the notice, as Mike was saying, to the person that's doing the short-term rental. And then the property owner then has to come justify if there is a complaint of why or what they're gonna do to address the situation to make sure that doesn't happen.
but we're kind of acknowledging, we know that it's gonna be more than. They're gonna have more than 4 people at that.
I don't
event.
think that's necessarily true. No, because I mean, what
You're saying
happens
they
if I'm
can't.
just in town for the weekend, I need a place to stay, and like 2 or 3 people, I mean, I'd be completely. I don't think it's a given that every short-term rental is gonna have an event or a party.
No.
The second thing is, I don't think that it tells them that they have the license to do it. I think it's clearly spelling out what the rule is, and they'd be in violation of the town code.
I can tell you an example. I have a friend who wanted to have a graduation party at a short-term rental somewhere along the lake in Canandaigua last year. And she called all around, and what happened is everybody said, no, they don't allow events at short-term rentals in the town of Canandaigua. So she had to look for another location out of our town or at Ononda or whatever it was. And what happens is that the owners are communicating themselves. You know, it's clear that you can't have events at these locations. And that's, you know, it puts the onus back on the owner to be communicating that at the time of rental and after they get there, that if you do this, I could be losing my permit, you know, and it puts pressure on them if they're getting a complaint to get out there and be like, you guys got to get out of here right now, or I'm going to lose my permit. You know, that's what it does. So
I guess we're just dealing with. I have a negative presumption, you have a positive presumption. I just think that generally these short-term rentals, especially in the lake, you're gonna have a jillion people, no matter how many bedrooms you've got. At least during their short-term rental stay.
and then they won't
It's
be a short-term rental anymore if they keep having a jillion people.
Only if.
Well, I
it's
think-
filed.
Enforcement nightmare.
To your point, Tom, that. But if we take it out,
Yeah, no, I know.
then there is.
I don't know what the answer is.
Right,
here either.
there's no control, but at
Yeah.
least if we got something in there and they're not good neighbors. At least we got something to fall back on, right?
Which helps if. Go along with me here on page 7, item 7. We say any conduct on the premises. Which result in 2 or more complaints from the adjacent property owners relating to such activities. I would delete involving parties or events or loud noises or which such activities. In other words, just any conduct which results in 2 or more complaints and so on. Would that be better?
I would leave it in personally because.
Yeah.
The town of Canandaigua, we do not have a noise ordinance, correct? So the sheriff's office, in this case, say it's on the lake, would be the one taking the noise complaint.
So
They're very well
you're not gonna
communicated.
decide what's loud.
So if the sheriff's office contacts me and says, hey, Mike, it's 11 o'clock on a Saturday and this happens. We just got a noise complaint along the lake, such and such address, that gets documented. Okay. Should another one happen 3 weeks later, then the sheriff's office calls me again. Now they're in violation of item 7.
Now I got a question about this. I'm glad you brought this up.
What is conduct which
I was-
gives rise to a complaint?
I was gonna say,
Up to the complainer.
doesn't the complaint need to be verified that they disobeyed or broke an ordinance?
Yes, I agree, but this section, this entire section that you guys are talking about.
Yeah.
Is under the section grounds for suspension by the planning board, so
Yes.
all of that, those complaints. All of that information and data would be presented to the planning board, and the planning board would make that decision.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a way to confirm that
Yeah.
they
That's
were
why.
verified
Yes,
to be against our ordinance.
Mike's not walking in and going zoink. I mean, it's
Yeah,
not.
the
it's
only time
coming
that for
to the
this
planning board.
code enforcement, just to like that one, it's the only time that we're allowed is
Yeah.
health, safety, life safety, fire hazards.
Well, that answers the question. As long as it goes to the planning board and then we say, well, if we got these 2 complaints and yes, they were violating the ordinance.
Right.
You couldn't go in there and say, well, we got these complaints and we you know, it was unverified, we couldn't verify it.
I mean, if you've got a good short-term rental, they're filling everything they're supposed to do, they're not getting complaints against them.
Yeah.
They're never gonna go anywhere near the planning board. They're just gonna fill out some applications and everything will be hunky-dory here. It's gonna be the 3-4 places that are problematic that are showing up there. Probably, yeah.
I think the more complaint, like the conversation earlier, and that's why I'm glad you're gonna address it in the future. There's a lot more complaints that come in about the regular rentals, the long-term rentals, than the short-term rentals.
Any other items?
No, I rest.
I've got a couple.
Okay, go ahead.
So the very beginning, when we define the purpose, which I like that we're defining the purpose, thank you. I was wondering if you'd add a sentence in there, something that's saying that fees charged are covering administrative expenses,
I don't think you need to do that.
because that would indicate that the fees would A, cover the administrative expenses, and B, not be something that becomes a moneymaker for the town as part of the purpose. So that was something that was recommended in the short-term rental regulation writing seminar that I went to, so.
I
don't-
took the, sorry,
I was gonna say, I don't know if that's necessary. I don't object to it, but I don't think it's necessary, but
I think it's a given.
yeah, that's kind of what I think too.
I read a few different surrounding towns' purposes for their short-term rental laws, and none of them had it. Doesn't mean it shouldn't be in there, but do our other sections of code talk about the fees?
That was what I was gonna follow up with, that if we did it here, would we have to go and do it for all of our codes that, or ordinances that are associated with fees?
I mean, it's also a general question, if the fees are meant to be just covering expenses or something beyond that,
moneymaker.
so.
Yeah.
So, okay,
What else?
just throwing it out there. Next one I had is page 2. Under property or short-term rental property, you say mobile homes. Do we have mobile homes defined in our code, or does it say manufactured houses?
Manufactured, I apologize, I meant to take that out,
Okay,
sorry.
so that's, I was just wondering what was defined there, so.
So are we gonna say manufactured homes then?
No, we're just gonna take out mobile homes entirely.
Okay.
Okay.
What's
All
a
right.
yurt?
The round thing that the.
What,
Yeah.
yurts are cool. Scale.
It's a tent, but a tent is not always a yurt.
It's for glamping. Do you know what glamping
I
is?
know what glamping
Okay, it's for glamping.
What's the ethnic group that has yurts?
I think
Oh, where
it's
did it
like-
come from? I
I
don't
think it's
know.
from Mongolia.
Yeah, the Mongolians live in them. They're cold and they're dark and they're smoky. You don't want to rent one.
Okay, yurts and crawling. Anyway, on page 3, again, where we indicate local, we've already kind of discussed this, but we should be defining what we're calling as local. That's on item 3
And
under,
we concluded that was
CRD.
the county of Ontario and the contiguous counties.
yeah,
Is
so
this a separate occurrence or the same one?
I think
that we
it might
talked
be a
about
separate
before?
occurrence. I'm not sure.
Item 3.
I mean, just search local and see. And then, under same section there, under 6. That's where it's talking about the most recent inspection of the septic system. Should we indicate that that's within the last 5 years, or an inspection within the last 5 years? Because if their most recent inspection is 19 years old, we're not gonna take it, so.
Wait, the 5 years isn't townwide.
It's not, that's,
Okay.
so that's why we didn't, is so that it was based off of that chapter 202.
Okay,
If it's alongside the lake, it's every 3.
yeah,
Anywhere else, it's at time of home sale.
yeah, I know, it's at time of home sale. that's
So-
why do we care that it's at time of home sale then? I mean, it's,
You're opening a whole can of.
Oh, yeah,
worms
you'd
there.
have to redo the other section of
Yeah.
code and everything. I don't think you can, I don't know how
Okay.
to do that.
If somebody, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe if you've got a 2-bedroom home and you make it a 4-bedroom home. When you get a permit,
do
you
it
gotta
then.
show that the septic is
can handle it,
adequate, so
yeah.
we do have some checks and balances, I think. And
Okay.
on the lake, it's covered by our, whatever that statute is.
And hopefully they're getting inspections more than every 19.
I can tell you when I sold my dad's property, it hadn't had an inspection in 19 years. And they came out there like, whoa, Really good thing that you pulled us.
That was prior to our new on-site wastewater law. That was just done
Yeah.
4 or 5 years ago.
Okay,
So I don't think that you're gonna have any situation like that along the lake anymore, because now we have that law.
Dad was in Gorham, so it's all good.
Oh.
Yeah, not that one.
Yeah, Gorham adopted it also, so I'm surprised they must not be inspecting it.
Moving on.
That's all.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it.
So. How do we move forward? We're gonna modify this for final review and approval at our next meeting?
Yeah, we can make the changes you guys talked about today.
Okay.
Go to you
Or we
again.
could also just ship it right into the
Yeah, I
town
see.
board at this point. This is, we're just nickel and
Yeah, we
dime little
could. Yeah,
things.
that's great.
I
I am
don't see
too.
it.
I mean, we've got 3
I
town
agree,
board
that's a good
members here
suggestion.
already, so it's, I mean.
Gary, you okay with that?
Yeah, I just had a question here regarding that item number 7. Is it possible to insert any, just occurred to me, language indicating that the town would be held harmless and any liability disputes between the owner and a renter of a short-term rental unit?
Yeah, that's what I suggested. Don't you think?
Aren't we already held harmless with those kinds of complaints when we get complaints in our, like people call, my neighbor's doing this, that, and the other thing, and it's already not something we deal with. We tell them that's a civil issue between them. I don't know if that.
I'm talking about a neighbor. I'm talking about somebody that's running from a short-term rental property owner.
Yeah.
Probably where a dispute would arise involving, an insurance claim, the liability issue. I mean, we don't want to be sucked into it. Was the discussion earlier in the meeting. But I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, but would it make any sense to have anything in there saying that don't count on us for a deep package, we're out of this?
What do we do with long-term rentals in that situation?
Same thing.
I know, but what do we have written? Do we have anything written anywhere? Because it would be the same discussion.
I don't know.
I don't know that I mean, it doesn't matter. You can't say, you can't sue us because they can sue you anytime.
Yeah.
Right.
Why don't we could throw a quick note out to Nadler and see if he has an opinion on it. I mean, that's not, no one in this room is a lawyer, so I think that's.
They good.
So Sarah, is that something you could do? Just send a note to Chris and then include it or not?
It's come there.
Final draft that goes to the town board?
Can
Yeah.
it be a hold harmless or indemnification agreement as part of the permanent? Then we can put it to bed.
And then we'll just give it to the town board for next meeting agenda.
Yeah.
You all comfortable with it?
Yep.
Yep.
We need a motion on that or anything?
I did.
I'll second your motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
Can I ask a question on timeline? When should this go to the town board?
Well, it won't be in the December meeting, that's for sure.
Well, you got the organizational meeting that's gonna be so full with all the stuff you have to normally do, and it's jammed right against the holidays.
Just put it in January 30.
Put it in the January meeting.
Second.
January meeting, right?
But that's what I just was saying.
That's your
No, but we have the 2 January.
We've only ever had the organizational meeting and a second meeting to pay the bills the last day of the month.
Oh, that one.
So the town board does not have a third Monday in January, never has.
Okay, so we can do it in
That's a holiday.
February. Do it in next, which would be February. I don't think there's any hurry for it anyway, so.
Or you could even, since the first part is that is a public hearing at the January 30th meeting when you pay the bills, you can set a public hearing for the February.
Yeah, we'll do it at the February meeting. I don't see that as being a
That's all. We're
immediate
just setting a
need.
public hearing. We could do that this month.
And Martha's took care of all the health, safety, and welfare issues that you had brought up in the division.
Okay, moving on. Are we prepared to talk about form-based code transparency.
I had one comment about that. I don't know that we've had applications come through for form-based code to have a big enough sample size to know whether or not there's an issue.
And let me jump on that because so Sarah and I had a conversation as a result of an application that we were talking about, and some stuff that's going on with the zoning board. I think I would strongly recommend that the town consider bringing in Bergman again, which is the entity that helped sort of draft the form-based code, and do an educational training on the form-based code for all of the boards. Have one session, have everybody attend, get everybody up to speed on what it is and what it means. Because I think there's also some misunderstanding about what you can and can't do and everything. And so even how to interpret transparency, and then make a decision if you need to modify the law.
And shouldn't we have some professional based analysis of an engineer's report or an engineer's evaluation of this transparency issue? Was it for aesthetics or was it for engineering?
I think they were complaining about buildability.
In
of
my
certain
opinion,
structures.
and I'm gonna just be honest, in my opinion, it's developers trying to be cheap.
Agreed.
Because in the case of the situation that's happening right now before the zoning board, if they would change the garage doors literally to have glass in them, like for instance, like Uptown Automotive had it, they wouldn't have the issue. It's developers trying to be cheap and cut corners.
So the solution there is have them go to the zoning board and get turned down.
Well, that's what's happening right now.
Okay.
But there's a need for training because the zoning board, this is the first time they've seen that. And the planning board, no, and all the boards. That's why I said there's a need for additional training to understand what this really means.
But if this is a one-off, why are we wasting too much time on it?
Right, to the point of Sarah, that we haven't had enough
And if it
exposure
becomes
here,
all the time,
right?
then we
Then we're-
attack it.
yeah. So let's,
Let the zoning board decide what makes sense.
I agree. So let's keep this on the agenda, but
let's make a recommendation.
or
of getting
keep it on our list of to-dos. Yes, thank you, Tom.
But we need a recommendation. I think, I don't know if that comes from us or from the town board, but we need to hire Bergman to come in and do a training.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I've already reached out to them. I'm gonna poke them again.
And I'd like the town board to be invited to that training as well.
Yeah, all the
They-
boards,
it was
right?
my-
And I think we ought to do it
Yeah.
post holidays, obviously.
And I looked through, I've got way too much crap at home. And I couldn't find the stuff that we collectively went through when we were doing the zoning
Form-based code.
form-based
It
code,
was-
when we looked at it and changed things.
That was in the economic development committee. It would have been in that.
Yeah.
That's where we
But
came up. with it.
I lost somehow,
Mhm.
or it's in the bottom of the pile somewhere. So before we talk about it, I guess, make sure we all have copies to take a look at it.
Mhm.
What do you want copies of?
The form-based code for Uptown,
It's on the website. I can print you a copy.
please.
Just the actual code that has been adopted or
Yes,
all the
please.
information from before?
You know, stuff before that we spent a lot of time on it, I remember, for sure.
I'd just like a copy of the code, please.
Give it to me. You give me a lot of stuff.
I may have, maybe that's what I wanted to. I looked
Print
at
like
it.
5 copies.
I'll look. I still have it. I
Well,
recycle.
relax, Sarah's gonna leave me a copy.
I'm gonna make several. I will
Okay.
have them. I'll make sure.
Yeah.
You 4.
Yeah.
Well,
You
yeah.
I have it.
You can hang it on the wall under the award for perusal anytime you come in.
Oh, I'm glad you said that. I was thinking about this last night and I couldn't sleep.
You were
do.
thinking about form-based code when you said Sarah. My word. woman.
No, it's good, and here's why. I just don't want anyone to forget how much work went into creating this form-based code, how many people from the business community in Uptown who own buildings up there were in favor of this,
Yep.
and how many times the town has been recognized for our efforts in form-based code and Uptown and our comprehensive plan by state and regional planning agencies. So just because some developers don't like it, doesn't mean it should just be tossed to the side.
And a lot of the credit goes to Doug. And
I want to just jump on this because I had this exact conversation with Chris Nabler on Thursday morning last week. Because after the zoning board meeting, there was question, the zoning board held off on making a decision on an application that's before them currently. Because it was the first time they had a variance request in the form-based code, and that was specifically for transparency and setbacks and a variety of other things. And the question was brought up, when you have a situation, and I'll tell you specifically, it was relative to Evans Automotive, which is the old RSE building, right? And they want to, I had met with them before they even bought that property, and I had encouraged them to build towards the road so that they were lessening the degree of nonconformity. What they wanted to do is build away from the road, so they would be increasing the degree of nonconformity, which would make sense from a building perspective, right, in terms of what they're trying to do in terms of shop. But that's not what the community told us. What the community overwhelmingly told us through years, 2017, 2018, concept mapping, everything is, we don't want 332 to look like West Henrietta Road. So if you keep granting variances from form-based code, it's always going to look like West Henrietta Road. That's why the form-based code was adopted. And so getting them to a point where, even in this particular case, if they subdivide off the front and then build on the front lot closer to the road, so that they could be lessening the degree of nonconformity, you're going to have to get creative a little bit. But if they start granting variances under the form-based code, it's never going to change. It's always going to look like West Henrietta Road, which I heard overwhelmingly from the community. That's not what the community wants.
Well, and I will say, you know, we talk, a lot of times people have issues with people from the community not showing up at meetings or not getting public input. When we had the meeting with the developers and the owners of the properties within what's now basically the bid and the form-based code area
At the school building.
yeah, that was the most turnout I had ever seen from residents and property owners at a meeting where we were just really in the planning stages of how we were going to do this. I mean, we must have had 60 people in there.
We mailed every property owner in the proposed form-based code district a letter and asked them to come and participate.
And I stopped by personally and talked to a lot of them myself too, to try and get them in there. And it went from business to business, talking to each other and saying, are you all coming in? And we really had a lot of input.
But there was overwhelming support.
Very much so, yeah.
What you're running into now is, for instance, like there's a new owner of the building. They bought this building. They came in to meet with me. I told them what they were going to be able to do or not do. They didn't like the answer. They still bought it. And now they're trying to jam through what they want to do.
Exactly. The same thing that happens on the lake. So.
And in my office, we can advise them of what the code requires. We can tell them what the town would like to see based on the documents we've adopted. But they still have a right to apply to go to the zoning board and ask for relief from the rules.
We just have to stand firm and say, no, this is the intent of the town for a reason. This is what we want as a town. This is why we have those rules and regulations in there. And that's, you know, the zoning board, in my opinion, is there for if there's a very good reason why you need an exception in this case. And usually there's not.
I think we knew going into this, there's a lot of non-conformities.
Oh yeah, we knew, absolutely.
And we've got all these car dealerships. And something's gonna happen with those things. So, you know, how's it gonna happen? When's it gonna happen? We knew it'd be a challenge. I think is vision in now with the application?
They want to just change the face.
But
Hyundai.
Form-based code.
And the form-based code, based on the table in the front of the document, even under 50% of the square footage of the facade, if the proposal is to change under 50% of it through, you know, new siding or something like that, they still are supposed.
Not an issue.
No, for this one, I don't think it is, but it still is saying that, well, this still has to come into compliance with all these other categories. So for that application, they don't want to add, you know, a bunch of square footage to the building and bring it up to the road, then they would have to request a variance in order to do what they're currently proposing.
Or at least lessen the degree of non-conformity.
They could, yeah, but nothing
But-
they're proposing lessens it.
Right, in this particular case, they're trying to increase the degree of non-conformity.
Right, they're actually
They're
removing
removing
their
that.
entryway
Yeah.
and making the front of the building flat instead of sticking out in that triangle.
Yeah.
And then the rest of their proposal is just replacing windows and siding and stuff.
So you're gonna see it all the dealerships here, so we just have to stand up.
Stand tough is right.
We did have one good example. One of the car dealerships wanted to put in basically a shed. Like tool storage shed. And we went back to them and we said, that's gonna trigger all this other stuff. I said, is there, maybe consider an addition instead, an addition that complies with code, and that's what they're gonna do.
Well, I'll give you another example. So I had a conversation, I'll just tell you, with Randy Farnsworth, and obviously we had Garber bought that, so Garber wanted to put a used car sales separate office out front, and I said, Randy, come on, work with us. So long story short is they're now working on, it's my understanding, plan that'll come in sometime next year to build a new satellite building out front under form-based code, I think specifically for whichever one it is. I think it's Cadillac that's separated out. Putting that out there with maybe a used car sales center out there, but building it towards form-based code. So that'll, but that's gonna take time, like you said,
Little by little.
little by little.
Yeah, and I can see, put the showroom out this.
Sure, yeah.
On a glass, put some cars in it.
Someday you will see it. We won't.
Is the evolution of car sales changing to the point that, mass lots with cars will not be the norm
That's
anymore?
what we're
And
hearing.
If that's the
Correct.
case,
Yeah, the boutique store.
then you're gonna be in buildings and
Right.
you can have the parking in the showroom.
Because what's eventually gonna happen, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, I have no idea, but what's eventually gonna happen is you're gonna see more and more people buying cars online. That's why the boutique stores in the town of Canandaigua is gonna have these massive empty parking lots, trying to figure out what to do with them.
Already do. We already do.
It's, form-based code is getting ahead of that so that you can start to plan for the infill of all of those.
Yeah, and form-based code has the flexibility to allow that.
Doug, last week, I can't remember when it was, early last week, Monday maybe. There was a request to set up meetings with Jeff Cook.
Yes.
And a comment you made to me about what he wants to do in the uptown area where we have and intend to employ form-based code was that incentive zoning might have to be used in order to accommodate what he wants to do. Doesn't that fly in the face of being strict on form-based code?
Well, keep in mind, form-based code is two separate things. It's form-based code, which is the 332 area, and then it's also the sub mixed use area. So what Jeff Cook is proposing is in the sub mixed use area and that whole area, which is a little bit more of a transitioning. When we did the feasibility analysis, it was always 332 was form-based code, all of the stuff, and I do think you need to be strict along that 332 corridor. And then there would be a design transition back from 332, from the corner buildings with the glass transparency, back to the rest of the community. So then you'd get into the townhomes, you'd get into the single family residential before, like, for instance, you got over to County Road 28, if you thought of like a transitional type of an area. The Jeff Cook proposal that, is just starting now to come forward is a mixture of under form-based code, but it's a mixture of apartments, townhomes, and single-family residential. However, I think what they would probably need is a rezoning application to incentive zoning to do exactly what it is they're trying to do. They wouldn't be able to do what they're trying to do in the mixed-use sub area. So that's something for the town board, obviously, to think about and consider and see what that looks like. I would really encourage you to think long and hard, but if that project came in and included 332 specifically, that would fly in the face, I think, of the feasibility analysis that the community spent so much time doing. But because it's back in the mixed use sub area, I think you have more flexibility.
We're not prohibiting single family in the mixed use sub area though, right? That
It
was
is
just
not
in the
prohibited,
332.
But it's when you get into the level of density and the number of units and everything else, they would either need a whole lot of variances, or it might be better for both parties to consider incentive zoning.
I haven't seen what they.
Correct.
were
That's why
presenting,
you have to
Yeah.
see that first.
Well, we do
Oh.
say that incentive zoning applies to all zoning districts, so.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But we have, the only prohibition against single family housing is in the 332 sub area, correct? Yes, it's not in the.
Correct.
Doesn't prohibit housing, just
Single family in the 332 sub area.
Okay, anything else?
Well, just since we're talking, the other little thing that has just come up this week as we were having this conversation last week. So there's a section of the town code, just so you're aware, in the community commercial zoning district that says used car dealerships are not permitted in the town of Canandaigua unless they're affiliated with a new car dealership. Essentially outlawing all used car dealerships in the town of Canandaigua. For years and years and years, the town has had 3 or 4, I'm sorry, that were grandfathered in.
Mhm.
One of which was on County Road 10, which has ceased operating as a used car dealer, so they're no longer grandfathered in. And then there were 3 on 332, one being Heritage Motors, one being RSE, and the other one being, I don't remember what it was, but the place up further up on 332.
Yeah.
Rick Spur.
Yeah, Rick Spur. So Evans Automotive has now bought all 3 of them. And continued the use as used car dealerships. You know, the one thing that has come up with specifically the corner of Kettner and 332 with that one, which was RSE, is they're expanding not only the building, you know, as a pre-existing non-conforming building under the form-based code, they're expanding the operations of the used car dealership. But when we adopted form-based code, we did not prohibit used car dealerships under form-based code.
Correct.
So when the form-based code replaced the community commercial in that specific area, technically used car dealerships are now allowed in the form-based code because they're not prohibited. So that is something the town should definitely think about, whether or not you want to add that and still prohibit that. Because as of right now, anybody could open a used car dealership on 332.
a
But
new
that's-
one.
But that's the whole point of it, right? The whole point of the form-based code is that if it looks in such a way and is brought to the front of the road like the form-based code is supposed to do, we are not questioning what you're doing in this space that looks in this particular manner. That's why it's so important that they aren't granting a variance to build it back just like it, you know, currently is. So,
Correct, but specifically the operation and sale of used vehicles was always prohibited under community commercial.
Yeah.
Under the town code, because they didn't, the town somewhere along the lines decided they didn't want a bunch of used car dealers filling 332 in every county.
But I think honestly, I think when we discussed it in the meeting, it was again, I mean, that came up, I'm pretty sure when we were creating the code, and it was just simply. The whole point, I think why people would not want used car dealerships is to have giant lots of cars with 599 stickers, you know, sitting out in front of a giant building. If they were built in arrangement of form-based code, I don't think there's a problem with them running a used car dealership in the 332 area, as long as it looks like it's supposed to within form-based code. I mean, that's the whole point of form-based code, that it's about how it looks and the appearance, how it's presented to the town, not what business you're doing behind that wall. So.
Well, we certainly can put that on the agenda for future conversation. But I tend to agree with you, headline, but it might be worthy having a conversation about it anyways, right? Okay, moving on. Residential minimum square footage.
I don't think we got enough time to talk about it today.
What time we got?
Almost 10 after 10. I guess I have to leave by 10:15,
Okay,
and because we got to.
So where did we leave this? I'm trying to,
It's
I don't-
it's 1,100 square feet, right?
okay.
So. Currently, except for manufactured house.
Correct.
what are that, what's the minimum on those?
I think it's just, it doesn't call out a true minimum.
It
per
does.
Does it?
Yeah. I don't remember what the number is. Yeah, manufactured homes, single wides and double wides have their own minimum requirement. However, a double wide manufactured home could be built outside of a manufactured home lot if it meets the building code requirements for having a permanent foundation rather than a, you know, traditional mobile home foundation.
And in that case, is it subject to the 1,100 square foot, or is
I
it?
can't remember, it might be, but
I think it's the building size, isn't it? It's the exterior building size as opposed to.
it could not be a single wide, it had to be a double, and
Double wide.
I don't
So,
remember what.
If I'm
it was.
not mistaken, this came up because I think it was you, Adeline, was concerned that we don't have a minimum stated in our ordinance, and subsequent to
No,
that.
it wasn't that. It was it initially came up because we thought it was 1,300. I don't know where that came from, but we thought it was 1,300. And the Affordable Housing Committee had said, you know, if we can reduce that, it could provide an opportunity for more affordable single-family homes to be built within the town of Canandaigua.
Okay,
So that's where it
now we
originated from.
recognize that was 1,300 foot is not the
Sarah
ordinance.
found last month
1,100
it's
square foot
1,100.
is the ordinance.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll just bring up the question, do we want to modify it?
We do get requests from people who would like to come in and build a single family dwelling that's smaller than them. Not all the time, but we do get it.
Right now, under, I've got the manufactured housing is 220-9S. Single wide, minimum square footage is 720. Double wides no less than 1,100.
Okay, so it was the same.
And no double wide shall be less than 20 feet wide. That's the manufactured housing. Well,
So right now, the
I
only
submit,
way-
I don't know, is there any way of doing a sweep of our assessors database, how many homes we have in the town of Canandaigua that are under 1,000 square feet? I'm suggesting there probably are,
Or under 1,100.
whether it's,
Sure, there's a way.
That's, I would think that'd be pretty easy to do, so.
but you know, there are perfectly beautiful homes that can be built,
Mhm.
whether they're an ADU that are 1,000 feet or 800 feet, that wouldn't embarrass a community.
There's several streets in the city of Canandaigua. I mean, Fort Hill Avenue has a number of them. Circle Drive has a number of them that are in the
There's some
900 square
In
foot
the
area.
town of Canandaigua, I'm sure across from the hammocks there,
Mhm.
those are a bunch that are smaller.
Yep.
And I'm sure there are some in Middle Cheshire Road
Mhm,
that are non-conforming.
mhm.
And I'm sure down in the R3, there are as well. But we have to acknowledge that there is room for smaller homes.
So when we are ready to have this full conversation, I think there's three components, you know, smaller homes to be built like a regular single family home, tiny homes and ADUs, you know, I think those are the parts that we need to discuss as part of the conversation, because there's going to be people, I mean, I don't know if there's any land left on Canandaigua Lake, but there's going to be people with an interest in tiny homes. There's going to be people with an interest in ADUs. Do we want to allow things like that? And at what level we would put a minimum square footage? And that might be something that's nice to ask the county about, you know, for affordable housing thoughts, what the right number is for that. So.
What do surrounding towns have? Do they have minimums, or
Bristol
maybe we
does.
could take a look at that?
Bristol does.
I think Middlesex
Worcester,
might.
Bristol's is 1095. They're also looking at not adjusting it, but adding in an ADU exemption because of the affordable housing. Everyone else, I believe, is right on par between 1,000 and 1,200. I know East Bloomfield is 1,000. So everyone's kind of just in the same boat.
At this point, we're talking one structure on one single lot.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to come up with a minimum.
Non-accessory, yeah.
That would be the next discussion.
That's the next discussion, yeah.
Once we decide what the size of the house should be. Okay.
Let me just throw it off for conversation. What do we care what size the house is?
I mean, so I don't personally, in my opinion, I don't want someone purchasing a property on the lake and building tiny homes and having smaller and smaller properties have, you know, 400, 300 square foot homes. That's.
But if they comply with the minimum lot sizes and there are three choices, I don't care whether they put a 300-foot square foot home, is that gonna diminish the value of the guy next door? I don't think so.
No, the
Because they're not gonna
tendency's
be
the
able to
other way.
afford the lot, they're, you know, it's
Yeah.
gonna take care of itself.
We know the tendency is the other way. People are trying to put mega mansions on.
Mhm,
That's the other thing, Chance, I mean, as you see,
$5 million
the
lot.
setbacks they want an exemption from, or lot coverage they want an exemption from. Right, yeah, the odds of somebody buying a
Yep.
cheap lake lot and putting a.
There's not, in the town of
ain't
Canandaigua, there's
gonna
not really
happen.
any lake lots left, so.
John, I gotta run.
Yeah.
Sorry.
This is something we're gonna bring to close today anyways, but. I mean. I don't know why we care about what size it is. Doug, can you think of any reason why we would care?
Well, there's minimum building standards, there's a minimum size that we have, whatever that is. I think you start to get into conversations about tiny homes and those types of things.
Hunting homes?
Tiny
Oh,
homes.
tiny homes.
There's a lot of conversation about that, with the affordable housing team. I would, you know, I think Adeline's on something. I think you'd be wise to talk with Ryan Davis, and the new county housing study that was just completed, and really understand what that showcased and the need that's there, and then make a decision based on some of that stuff.
So it might be good to invite him to the January meeting and kind of get some feedback about that then.
I'm sure he would be willing, I would think, about it.
You said hunting homes, that actually brings up some of the complaints we get. We've had a couple people want to buy land and put in a small cabin. And all the plans they were looking at were smaller than our minimum, and they were upset that they couldn't.
Well, and you also
Do
get that, I mean, I've seen it so many different times. Somebody buys a piece of property and they want to put a garage on it and then eventually build a house, but they're limited to what, 900 square feet is all they can do. Without having another building, without having a house on it. There's a variety of things in the code that pop up on it.
But to that point, Sarah, you know, if someone were to buy a large piece of property and wanted to put a tiny home on it for hunting or whatever the case may be, why do we care?
I personally don't, but they're not allowed to.
No,
And that's why we're talking about the minimum square footage.
And that's my point is.
That's why we're talking about the
You
minimum
can't.
square footage,
Yeah.
is, I don't. If someone wants to build, you know, a 900 square foot house, I don't care, I mean.
as long as it meets the standards of whatever we're, you know.
Right, as long as, you know, my comprehensive.
But that's the point, they can't, it's against the law right now, so
And
why?
I'm-
Why?
and
Well,
I'm
I mean,
arguing
like
the
state
point-
building safety code,
Yeah.
it could meet those codes and still be smaller than what our
Yeah.
code allows.
And I think with the way the economy is going and the high price of homes and cost of building a home, I mean, if somebody wanted to build a smaller home, I have no objection to it. I don't. I mean, that's kind of like letting the free enterprise system take care of itself, right? But I mean, certainly, let's bring Ryan in and Sarah, is that something you can do? Invite him to the next ordinance committee meeting?
Yes.
We have to also think about how it would affect, you know, when we picture a small home, we're picturing hunting cabin, you know, on a gazillion acres somewhere. We also have to picture it in a high density area too, like what the effect would be on a, you know, if we did a really high density development with a lot of smaller homes, you know.
But
and
keep in mind lot size, right? So the
Yeah,
lot size is
mhm.
really what's gonna dictate, not the house size.
do we still do conservation easements and such though too? Because then that
Conservation
can,
subdivision, but
Yeah.
that still has lot size restrictions and stuff.
okay,
And so that would play into that more than the house size.
what about in the form-based code area?
Same thing, right? There's minimum lot sizes.
Yeah.
So it's all triggered based on lot size. That's why even like this new potential one, and I said incentive zoning, because what they want are smaller lots than the form-based code will allow. And so, you know, it's lot size is really gonna be the determination. more
What's
than
our
the
lot
house
size in the form-based code area right now?
Oh, off the top of my head, it's 100 by. Is it 100 by 100? I think don't quote me exact, but it's 100.
Can't be 100 by 100 because mine's 100 by 60. So
Form-based code. Yeah.
no, I mean my lot in my it's not only 60 wide. So but
No, but form-based code. Yeah, absolutely.
we did 100 by 100.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and actually, the developer wants to propose even smaller than that. Absolutely.
Why did we do 100 by 100?
And I guess
I think that's what it is. But
I- I would say in response, doesn't that meet some of the intent of what the affordable housing
Yeah, no, that's what we're talking about.
wants, right?
Yeah.
So if somebody wanted to go and build smaller homes on smaller lots and they're all in a certain particular area and confined to that area.
That's why we're talking about it. That's what, I mean, it's
kind of like
it's-
letting the free enterprise system take care of
Yeah,
itself.
it's why,
right? I mean,
and that's why I bring it up to begin with, because particularly when we
well, I
thought
think
it
it's
was,
a good conversation.
when we thought it was 1,300, I'm like, well, that's ridiculous. I literally used to live in a 1,200 square foot house that was 4 bedrooms, you know, I'm like, why on earth would it be 1,300? But
Yeah.
I mean, 1,100 is a little bit better, but I still think, you know.
So let's hear what Ryan says at our next meeting. We'll invite him to the next meeting.
Hopefully
Terry,
he can make it.
any comments you have?
No, that sounds good. That's, if somebody going like what Sarah brought up about honey cats, we've got one parked right across from town hall now. Somebody wanted to plunk one of those down on 50 acres out in the our street area. What difference would it make? I mean, you're not going to see them. So
yeah.
I think it's the aesthetic is something people are concerned about. But if you dress a place up and have somebody, promise to do that, so it's not, tar paper and old pallets. I mean, shouldn't really care.
Agreed.
It's something to do with.
So our next meeting then is on January 8th. Same time and place. And we will continue our conversation on square footage minimums. And Sarah, you will ask Ryan Davis to attend. And are there any other hot topics that we need to take up at this point?
Just as a quick reminder, I know it sounds silly, but officially the ordinance committee won't exist until the evening of the 8th.
Yeah.
Because that's the organizational meeting for the town board.
Mm-hmm.
You can still, more than likely, it stays the thing.
Right.
Just officially, just keep in mind.
Yep.
And it doesn't follow the normal first Monday pattern.
I
The first is a holiday.
It's something that might be wonderfully seasonal for that is kind of a hot button item that no one ever wants to talk about, which is sidewalk maintenance. So we could throw that on that. That'll be seasonally. But
I'm
that's
comfortable talking about that.
That's kind of a that's a nice fun one.
So we'll
You
put
have a law. You have a law, yeah, it's just better.
I know.
Adopted, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's been adopted.
Well,
It's just not. Code, but they're-
Yeah, I don't know why.
I mean, it'll be very seasonally appropriate at that point.
So can we bring that law then to the meeting or?
Mhm.
Are you
I will not be.
okay?
It's been fine for you.
Okay.
Anything else? I have a motion to adjourn.
We'll move.
I can be.
All in favor?
I
All right.